called envelope system. The envelope system must be drastically reviewed. There's a need for far, far wider and deeper consultation with all the interest groups before you arrive at a realistic budget estimate. What is happening now is they send the Ministry of Finance, cook their figures, pass them on to us as a kind of prefab given to a builder, and we have little change making that. We can't do any overhaul anyway. Most you can do is very little remedial modifications. And this, in turn, we pass on to the managers, that institutions. In other words, the envelope system is a system which late Abiola would describe as shaving a man's head in his absence. That's not what it is. It's not realistic. Then the second point I want to point out here is when you go from envelope system to the managers in the fields, the major frustration they are facing is this. The revenue profile system is very faulty. It will tell them every year you have 10 kobo to spend. We go to oversight functions and find the managers frustrated. At best, they have 50% of that to spend, 40%, 30%. So we run into a large symmetry of uncompleted and dead projects and all that.
Okay. All right. Senator, let me come to the Minister of National Planning, Ambassador Yugida. The understanding of quite a few Nigerians will be that in terms of what the Senator just mentioned, the budget for education, it's a combination of the work of Ministry of Finance and that of National Planning, because you project to the future and you look at what is required. You've got the envelope system where decisions are taken, shaving the heads of those who are in the institutions of learning in their absence. Now, how do you get someone to become a leader when he has not influenced the amount of money he's going to spend on training of the teachers and other members of staff, and he's not able to influence anything that comes to him, and he ends up spending 70, 80, in some cases 90% of it on just paying staff salary and also repairing infrastructure?
Thank you very much, moderator. Let me just talk about, before I answer you, on the leadership. On the leadership, we are blessed in Nigeria to have a leader who was once a teacher, was once a lecturer, and who has gone through the whole education system in the university. Now, for us in the Ministry of National Planning and for us in the executive arm of government, what we do before passing a budget to the National Assembly is we sit at the level at the executives, we discuss on our priorities, and on the basis of what we know is going to accrue to the federal government, we now apportion that based on the competing demands of all sectors of the economy. So the envelope system everybody has been talking about is not done in isolation of all the MDAs. No. We, the MDAs, know what we are getting. On the basis of that, we plan and project. National Planning Commission, the Budget Office of the Federation, and the Ministry of Finance, we are involved with the budgeting process. And just to appreciate also our sons and daughters who have come here to join us as our sons and daughters, wherever they come from, they are Nigerian, they are our students, and we are proud of them, just to differ a little from my comrade governor. Thank you.
In terms of the planning then, how do you engage the principals of institution of learning across principals and vice chancellors? How do you engage them to know their needs so that they can plan for it?
Thank you. In national planning, what we do, we have a robust system of monitoring and evaluation. We have a robust system of developing framework for what we do. We engage the Ministry of Education. We engage the various interventionist agencies of government, And we have recently developed what we call KPIs, that is key performance indicators for all of us, not only us as ministers, but also all the key stakeholders in this sector, very important sector of the economy. And I also want you to know that one of the key aspects, one of the key fundamental policy of this present administration is human capital development. That is through educating our people. We live in a knowledge-based economy, knowledge-based country, and we are doing the best we can as a government. Most of us here are students, or all of us. Some of us is what I would call BBC, that is born before computers. But now, we all learn by the day. We have to know what our children are doing. We have to know how they Google. We have to know how they tweet. We also have to know how to communicate to them. So for us as a government, it's a collective responsibility as government, as citizen, and as a parent. So the issue of education cannot be left alone for government. It is business for all of us. Thank you.
Okay, let me move the conversation to the private sector now and ask Mrs. Shola David Bora, the CEO of Stanbic IBTC. In terms of leadership, one of the young people that was sitting here earlier today talked about not grades, but rather potential. And I believe that when you look at potential and you hire someone, you come to realize that if they fulfill their potential, it is not about the grades they scored in school, but rather what they're able to do in the long run. What is the position of your organization? And as somebody who is a practitioner in the private sector, what has been your experience of hiring young people and then promoting them to level of leadership within your organization?
Thank you. It's a very good observation because, as an employer of labor, one of the things that we have seen is that when fresh graduates, come take the entry examination, many of them don't have the capacity to think. Okay, they're used to a learning where they crammed everything. And the kind of tests that we design in our organization is one that you are forced to think. And therefore you find that those who don't go through a process where they were taught to learn and to think by themselves actually don't make the grade. Because the reality is what we want from a fresh graduate is their capacity to learn. For every company that recruits, they spend the first year training the recruits, exposing them. So their capacity to learn, to take on board new ideas is so critical. I believe our educational system must focus, like we have heard already, at character and learning and teaching our children to think, raising them to be leaders. And I'll make one point, which is that it's important for every single stakeholder in this educational debate to take ownership of establishing good governance. Because I strongly believe that the crisis we face today is because governance has been eroded. And every single one of us must ensure that in our sphere of influence, that we ensure that good governance is taking place, and we also hold others accountable. Because if we have governance in place, there's transparency, there's meritocracy, every other thing that we are concerned about, the finances, the students themselves being confident, the teachers, feeling pride in their profession will be sorted out. So I think that good governance is the foundation for a good educational system and is the basis for raising good leaders in our society.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. David Bora. Let me ask Abakari Buka. You work with CSCS, you are the CEO there. In terms of training and development, because we know that the primary and secondary school and then up to university, there is always that question about the quality of graduates that we churn out from this institution. and yet they're getting jobs in the private sector in Nigeria, and somehow some of them do excel. What is it that